Hey everyone, much love. Just checking in. Just so thankful to be meeting so many amazing people every day, or almost every day now. And just want to say thank you for reaching out. For those of you that, a lot of you have spent time watching a lot of my videos and waited years or months to reach out. You don't need to do that. A lot of people feel like they need to watch all my content before they begin taking the courses or working with me in one-on-one. But you don't have to watch anything if you feel called to work with me. By all means, the courses are really powerful, really healing, a lot of laughter and sadness and connections being made and non-linear understandings, understanding, being able to really trust in your intuition through losing one's mind. We come out of the mind on purpose. People think sanity is functional, but people that remain sane and don't move into the madness don't ever come to terms with what true sanity is, which is to become aware and lucid and magical, capable of enjoying your life in a true way rather than the pursuit of happiness. It's the pursuit of knowledge, which is not information. Knowledge is the ability to move one's perception and travel in the other layers. And so we are conditioned not to be of knowledge. The Toltecs refer to a man or a woman of knowledge as one that is not got caught in the sorcery or got caught in the witchcraft or the rational, reasonable world, because those are all trenches and traps. So Juan Matu said you have to learn how to handle the energetic side as well as be functional within the world of reason, but that there's a middle path, a path of freedom that you'll want to step into, because sorcery is a dead end street and so is ignorance. And so we develop a relationship with the earth and the sun as a means to be in communication, guided, shown, vision. When your imagination returns, you'll receive vision of what your life is, what your life's purpose is, and there is great guidance available to each one of us. We all have incredible gifts. But because we compare ourselves or try to mimic others, we often miss out on the opportunity to discover how incredible we can become. And the path of the seduction of materialism often hijacks people from their freedom because they identify with their possessions or with their abundance instead of being willing to let it go in order to be truly free. You can keep all your things, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if they own you, or if the weight of the money that you've earned is keeping you from living the life that you're most beneficial to live for whatever reason, then how can that be shifted, right? Like, so Carlos was given the task of walking away from all of his money and starting over in a small town in California without anything. He had to beg for a job and a place to live. So he lived in the basement of a man's restaurant and he cooked for him, and he had to crawl himself out of poverty. And by doing so, he discovered how resourceful he could become. And incredible things happened in that process. And so that apprenticeship was rigorous every step of the way. Even when he had all the money from the books he wrote and was traveling the world teaching his stuff, he was given the task of freeing himself from that security, because it's truly a false sense of security. Um, but there's also for people like myself, I tend to have a lack mentality, in that I, allowed the hypnosis of thinking that rich people were bad and poor people were good kind of concept that still overlays my limited self-worth. So how we thrive in this realm, how we start to move in a direction in which we can fulfill what we're being asked to do rather than, any sort of hiding that is, you know, at one point made sense in our life to not want to be seen or witnessed or to be private like I wanted to be. But Spirit told me to start my channel and to start sharing, and I listened, and it comes with challenges. It's not something I ever wanted to do for a particular reason. Um, but when you're listening and not overthinking or letting what you thought was going to be determine what you're here to do, then it's like, oh, you don't have to carry that story anymore. And it's a heavy story. Anything that is of the past, it doesn't make us light. And so shamans carefully erase their personal history, but they don't do so in a way that leads them into a mental ward because they forgot who they were. This place is dangerous, and so we have to, or we get to, be creative about how we unlock our imagination and move into more perceptual intensity. I know kids that were raised in very alternative ways that are not able to see the world that you and I see, and they have to be locked up because they don't see the traffic, they don't see the things that are right in front of them, because they're literally walking in other worlds while physically being trapped in this one, or whatever, however the assemblage point operates. It's a very strange thing. And so they're not insane or mentally ill, they're just, their assemblage point moves, and they weren't given the appropriate conditions in which they could have learned to utilize that gift in a sober way. And sober, I don't mean without drugs. I mean sobriety as in really sober in your perspective. And so learning to become fully lucid, one has to be honest with where you're really at as far as your capacity to laugh at yourself, to not get too serious about what you're up to not overdo or overthink. People that use sleep deprivation or fasting can get into some really high places where they start to gain illusions of grandeur around specialness, or they try to stay and keep that perception forever, and they don't come back down to earth. So it's good to get light and to feel the limitlessness that it starts to present, but it's important to get really grounded as well, and have people in your life that are being honest in their reflection rather than telling you what you want to hear. And that's a lot of what I do, is work with people one-on-one as a means to sometimes deliver concepts and statements that are threatening to any identity that my clients are attempting to maintain. And so this is why Toltecs go back into the matrix, into the workforce, try to find positions in which they're being, having pressure put on them by people with large egos, so that they can figure out what they're capable of, how triggered they get, and whether or not they can keep their center inside of that intensity. But this isn't something to do if you have a dysregulated nervous system. This is advanced. This is when you've healed your heart and you've healed your energy field and you are empty of all those stories. Then you go into those situations and it's very psychedelic to be at work when you've moved into heightened awareness. Everything becomes amazing. The conversations you hear or are a part of, But for a long time, I was not functional in those environments. I was saying the strangest things. I was super tripped out and ungrounded, nervous, trying to prove that I wasn't like any of those people. Uh, and so it's embarrassing to have gone through all that, but that's part of what people do when they are spiritual and not religious or scientific. But eventually I discovered that spirituality is a trap too. Like the Toltecs aren't spiritual, they're energetic and practical. And they learn how to navigate this world from those two places. They bring magic into the mundane so that it is no longer mundane. But they're very practical in just being realistic about how much energy they have. And they're calculative, strategic. A warrior develops a strategy on how to stalk themselves so that they're being truly realistic about where they're at. But that doesn't mean you wait until your life is perfectly in order to step into your magical side. I'm totally fucked up. I have all these areas that are undeveloped. I'm not claiming to be evolved on any level, but what I get to do at night with my dreams, what I get to do during my day with gazing, what I get to experience is otherworldly, and I'm starting to become otherworldly. And that's nothing compared to the teachers I worked with who could walk in and out of this world with ease. And so I'm so thankful just to have been in the presence of those people, because that gave me a perspective and understanding of, just the limitlessness, and that I'm fully a novice in this. And that's the difference between what I'm offering and what a lot of people are trying to speak to, is that I'm doing this with you. I'm inside of the process. I work with people to reflect to me things that I am not able to see. So being able to raise your hands and ask for help. Often that's where the doors open, is when you invest in yourself. That the universe then recognizes that you're willing to do the work and sends support, which can look like a new job, new partner, new friend, new opportunity. Sometimes all of those happen all at once, right? So what you think your life is supposed to look like versus being guided as to what it is here, what you're here to do, makes all the difference. And so I help people shift their perspective. And if you can shift your perspective, then you can move your perception. If you move your perception, you align with these lines of intent that will deliver you the most magical treasures. And so learning to recapitulate is accessing a treasure chest of feelings and memories that you forgot all about, that are stored within your being. And then that gives you access to your observer, who has been observing things even when you weren't paying attention. There's a part of you that was. A part of you that took a snapshot of every single moment you were in. And you've always seen the energy side of it. The energy signature has always been available to you. It's just that the part of you that sees that requires that you shift your assemblage point to that place in order to recall that. And once that happens, then you'll start to see energy all the time. Shamanic movement leads to being able to take care of your energy field in a way that prepares it for being jolted by perceptual shifts, which otherwise would be experienced as profound levels of anxiety. When your assemblage point it starts to move, if you're not able to move with it or trust it and you resist it, it's so uncomfortably intense that it can lead to panic attack and even physical suffering and even dying. And for Carlos, his fear was so intense, what Don Juan was doing to him, that if Don Juan didn't dump a bucket of ice water or throw him in the creek in that moment, his system was shutting down, because we are that powerful that our fear, which isn't even our fear, but because we think of it as our fear, we get caught in a bind. And so this is very advanced to move on this path of knowledge without listening. You know, if you're trying to overthink it or push yourself past certain stages, which is what I witness a lot in a lot of men who are sorcerers, focused on sorcery and not freedom. And they're teaching that to a lot of young, impressionable people. And it's really seductive to move past the emotions and not do the shadow work and just try to achieve sorcery goals. It's crazy to watch or to be aware of. And so I've been censored from those places so that people don't hear, so that my recommendations are not, you know, available to these people. And when I was able to speak to those rooms, I was attacked, you know, like in a really intense way, and in a variety of ways. And so it's just good to know how this place runs and what's controlling humanity, and you get to see it up front, especially in this body of knowledge. The Castaneda stuff's so powerful that people that get into it get blitzed so that they will become, you know, lost inside of it. Because if they were not to get lost inside of it, it would lead them to freedom. And the 100th monkey thing is real, and that the more people that free up themselves from hypnosis gives permission to others to do the same. It's really incredible how this all works. And in the circles I'm in, more and more people are realizing the things that I've been talking about as far as coming out of being offended and not needing the world to be any different than it is, coming out of the battle, realizing that your capacity to survive and navigate things has nothing to do with whether more and more people wake up. It's just a matter of you continuing to wake up and how to take care of your luminosity. And by that, I mean no longer feeding the parasitic forces that feed off of humanity. So someone recently asked, like, why don't they just end things if they have control in the way that they do? These puppeteers that are really puppets of other energetic puppeteers. And in reality, it's just simple. We are food. And if we therefore we're not being destroyed, we're being kept alive. We're being, you know, it's kind of like cat and mouse in a sense. It's keeps it going. But it's actually a vampiric aspect, and it's not a negative thing. We are just not as high on the food chain as these beings that can witness us that we cannot witness. And so only through the power of dreaming can one learn to face these inorganic beings prior to our death. We will come to terms with what's going on when we die, according to Toltecs. It's all is revealed. But Carlos presented, as Don Juan presented to him, the idea that we turn and face our captors while we have our life intact. And then we will discover our purpose. And the only way to do that is to stop lending our energy to this force. And so those of us that are doing this are some of the few who are opposing this force, not in a battle, but in a just not willing to adhere to agreements that we didn't ever agree to. And so once you understand this energetic opportunity, you know, then you go through all kinds of intense energetic shifts and emotional work in order to get to know how can you reset your focus and reclaim your intent and eventually develop unbending intent. Well, it all starts with shifting your perspective. So I invite you to just make little adjustments throughout your day. Be open to saying different things than you used to say about yourself, about how much time you have. Start trusting that everything will be unveiled to you. You can speak the word love, 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 freedom, freedom, freedom. You know, code your reality with beautiful messages. You know, get to know what it is that makes you feel alive, and pursue it, not in a reckless way, but in a way in which you can integrate it into the practical struggles that you're inside of, so that you bring magic in to whatever it is that you do in order to provide for you or your kids or whatever. Yeah, just reclaiming our attention through perspective shifts. So really appreciate everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.